Good morning. Welcome to your Wednesday morning, early morning intuitive guidance. I had to think about what day it was. It's Wednesday. I'm Dr. Bonnie Nussbaum, and we have two books that we're going to share a little bit of information out of today. And I think today's kind of call to action day, which I think will serve us all well and serve the people we serve well. So we'll wait for a couple of you to pop on, get our tribe of practical rebels built again here today every morning. Good morning, Cindy. Welcome. Good morning, Lucy. Glad you're here. Now people should start rolling in, because once a couple of you get on, it seems like, yep, we just jumped to 5. Good morning, Gwen. Good morning, Abigail. Glad everybody's here. Now we're up to 6. Fabulous. Thank you for the sunshine. I don't think we're going to see much of any of it today. The Canadian wildfires have pretty much obliterated the sun, and I guess we're supposed to get a huge storm, so we'll see. Good morning, Peggy. Welcome, welcome. Glad everybody's rolling in today. So those of you who have books, we are doing a little bit out of The Last Arrow by Erwin Raphael McManus, and a little bit out of Women's Work by Susan L. Eng, which is the transformational power of faith-based community organizing, and in particular, women organizing. So, the first part of what I want to share is actually a biblical story that Erwin Raphael McManus shares to make a point, and that point then kind of segues into the other book, which then leads to the call to action. So let's just start with some nice deep breaths. In through the nose, out through the mouth. In through the nose, out through the mouth. One more. In through the nose, out through the mouth. All right, so in The Last Arrow, good morning, Judy. Glad you are here, which subtitle is Save Nothing for the Next Life. In other words, go all in, be all present, take your best shot now. And know that I know that this is written from a very divine masculine perspective. First of all, it's a biblical story. That's all, a whole lot of divine masculine there. But also, Erwin's stance tends to be very divine masculine. But we can add the divine feminine flavor to this, and that's certainly what's going to come out of the Susan Eng book. So go along with it. Hear what you're meant to hear, and take away what you're meant to take away, and do with it what you're meant to do with it. So here we go. This part is on page 121. The chapter's called Stand Your Ground, and this little section is called Stand Apart. Good morning, Carolyn. Glad you are here. Welcome. And good morning to all of those who kind of shot past as I was yakking. So here we go. The prophet Samuel, who lived in the time of King David, described the unique individuals who came to David's side and created a fierce alliance with him. We all need our tribe, right? We need those people who have our back. We have theirs. We know we can count on them. He went into more detail about 3 particular individuals, and with each one he told a story that serves as the resume for their leadership. The third is a man named Shammah. Samuel described one brief moment when the Philistines banded together at a place where there was a field full of lentils, and Israel's troops fled from them in fear. But Shammah took his stand in the middle of the field. He defended it and struck the Philistines down. And we are told, of course, that the Lord brought about a great victory. Here we are with all the war language. But I think the point here is really important. As I picture the incident in my mind, the imagery is like a scene straight out of Gladiator, with cinematography that's a combination of Ridley Scott and Terrence Malick. An ominous Philistine army gathers at the edge of a field of lentils. The Israelites see them and are overwhelmed with fear. The Philistines are imposing both in stature and in sheer numbers. These are the people of Goliath. They are warriors by nature. They are ruthless and seemingly fearless. The Israelites, on the other hand, are clearly not ready for war. Just the sight of the Philistines causes them to abandon their posts. They run for their lives. Ironically, running in fear is not a solution to their problem. The Philistines are going to come, and eventually there will be war, which is a reminder for our own lives. Okay, so here's a takeaway. When we run in fear, we're only postponing the inevitable. And I go back to my Donna Onishuk was chased by some cows story from the other day. Little children's book by Bill Grossman that has a very similar message to this. When you turn and you face what you've been running from, oftentimes things don't turn out the way you fear they will. We will eventually have to face those fears. We will eventually have to fight those battles. Running only makes us weaker and makes our opposition stronger. Again, a lot of war language, but we'll get to the point where it's making the point I want to make. But then there is Shammah, who stands between two armies, one that came to fight and the other running in fear. Maybe at first he finds himself running with his men. Maybe at first he thinks it is a strategic retreat in an attempt to reposition so they can engage the enemy with some advantage. But then there is a moment when Shammah realizes that, for his army, the battle has already been lost. Good morning, Deb. Welcome, welcome. I can only imagine the satisfaction that must fill the Philistines when they realize that the battle is over before it ever began. How strange it must be when suddenly they see one man stop and turn around. Maybe Shammah does it only after pleading in vain with his men to take a stand. Good morning, Mel. Glad you are here. Maybe it is in the moment when he realizes that all his appeals to their honor and duty are to no avail. Maybe it is when he finds himself alone that he finds his courage. Suddenly the Philistines see one man stop and turn around. Shammah stands alone against an army. He stops in the middle of a field of lentils and takes his stand. Perhaps at first the Philistines simply send out one soldier, their champion, to face Shammah and end his insolence. And then, to their shock and dismay, Shammah strikes him down. Perhaps then they send 3, and then 10, and eventually however many of their men have a thirst for blood. They rush through the field of lentils to win a war against an army of one. Who can know the mind of this one man? How can we call his action anything but madness? How could a person have such little value for his own life that he would choose a battle he could never win? No one would scorn him for running. After all, he would simply be joining a legion of cowards who would together weave a story of impossible odds justifying their cowardice. So now this is the part that I think is important. This is the part I want us all to soak up and apply to ourselves, okay? People like Shammah create a problem for the rest of us. One person who chooses to live a heroic life disrupts the narrative we are living a lesser life as the acceptable option. Even if Shammah had failed, even if he had died, the moment he took a stand, he changed the story. He changed the standard. It's hard to tell a story as you sit around the fireplace and imagine that you had no option but to run because some innocent child will ask, but where's Shammah? For Shammah, there is no point in running for your life if once you get there, you have no reason to live. And if his stubbornness doesn't make things bad enough, the outcome makes it worse. He not only survives, but he wins. He does by himself what the armies of Israel did not believe they could do together. God does through one man what he clearly longed to do through all of his people. If they had not run in fear, Shammah's story would have been their story. When Shammah returns to his people, battle-weary and covered in the blood of his enemies, there is really nothing he needs to say. His presence, his very existence, is an indictment on every other man who fled. Don't expect to be popular if you rise above the status quo. So I want to repeat that line. Don't expect to be popular if you choose to rise above the status quo. When you are an agitator, when you are the one who says, hey, we've got the pink elephant in the living room, what are we going to do about this? When you are the one that takes people's hands away from their eyes, you are not going to be popular. And again, notice how women have been indoctrinated to not play that role, to not be the one who says, wait a minute, we've got a problem here. Until they begin to stand up, band together. Yes, thank you, Cindy. Appreciate that. We vastly overvalue being popular, going along to get along, being one of the crowd, all that stuff. So these are some opportunities here, and when I get to the other book, I think it'll help you see where I'm going with this thing. Don't expect to be popular if you choose to rise above the status quo. And how many people right now are rising above? How many of us are moving past the 3D life and up into 5D? Okay? Yeah, no more quiet, meek, and mild. And will people look askance at that? Absolutely. But how we choose to do it is up to us. So we'll talk. I have to wonder, what was it about that particular field of lentils that inspired Shama to take a stand? Maybe it was just the intersection of two armies that brought him to that place. Or maybe that field of lentils was a marker of the food and resources his people would need to survive. There was no explanation for why that particular place. Maybe it's because that's not nearly as important as the point of it all. There comes a time and a place where you have to decide this is worth fighting for. Good morning, CJ. And maybe we can change the fight language again to this is worth taking a stand for. This is worth taking a stand for. And again, I go back to Mother Teresa. If you have an anti-war rally, don't invite me. If you have a pro-peace rally, I'll be there. What do we want? And when I get to that little section in the next book, I'm going to ask that question again. He says, this is worth fighting for. This is where I stand. This is who I am. This is the life I have chosen. I will not run. I will not allow fear to move me from where I should be to where it wants me to live. I would rather die facing the challenge than exist running from it. Okay? So that reminds me of a line from a Shania Twain song. I'd rather die standing than live on my knees. I'd rather die standing than live on my knees. The stark reality is that all of us choose a burial plot long before we're buried in the ground. All of us, whether consciously or unconsciously, find a piece of ground where we choose to take our stand. Yet the reality is that for far too many of us, the place where we set our feet is rarely the result of a decisive decision to stop running and start fighting. I'm going to change that in. To stop running and take a stand. To stop running and take a stand. So that's the part in Irwin. Now I'm going to shift to women's work. The transformational power of faith-based community organizing. And it's interesting as I look at the pastor who is collaborating with me, or I'm collaborating with him, whatever you want to say, on building intentional community and affordable housing on their church property, sent me the list of the people who are going to be present at this roundtable discussion to move our project forward. It is not lost on me that out of 19 people who are going to be present, 3 are men. The rest are women. Women who make stuff happen. Women who make stuff happen. So, in this book, the gist is she's a minister and she's a community organizer, and the book is about women as community organizers and breaking into what was a man's world, community organization, and changing some of the ways things are done. And so she interviewed a lot of women organizers to put together her book. And this is a quote from a female organizer named Stephanie Colin, Kolin. And she's talking about issue campaigns, where you pick an issue that you're willing to take a stand on and go from there. So here's what she says. We have all these tools for casting our lots together, coming together as a group of women who take a stand for something, or a group of people. Awesome when the men show up. Awesome. Okay? What would happen if we decided that the kind of disparity between those who have and those who don't, the systemic racism that still endures in our country, the vulnerability of LGBTQ folks, the attacks on women and their rights to their bodies and beyond, equal pay, the Islamophobia and xenophobia, what if we decided we are all one? And the strategies and the access to relationships and the ways that sectors of our communities each play different parts to being able to build enough power to address that. What if we're willing to say that's what faith calls us to do? So, what are you called to do? Where are you called to take a stand, albeit unpopular? Where are you willing to say, hey, the pink elephant's in the living room and I'm not okay with this. What are we going to do to address this pink elephant? What are you willing to do? Boy, it's getting dark out there. I think we have a storm coming. What are you willing to do to speak up, to take a stand, to do so respectfully, but to say this isn't okay with me? And there's a word that I love that fits with this. Persists. As I'm reading story after story after story in here, one of the things that stands out is how often women had to persist. So they ask for something and they're rebuffed. And they ask again in a different way and they're rebuffed. And they go to some other organization and ask and they still hear no. Or they're blown off or they don't even get a response or whatever. But they just keep asking. Then sometimes they get to the point where they stop asking and they demand. What are you willing to take a stand on? For me, one that's important is water. And so you'll often see me agitating about Line 5 and its threat to our Great Lakes. 20% of the world's fresh drinking water. This is not a little hairy deal. Yes. Where are we going to take a stand? And with whom are we going to take a stand? And community organizing is about drawing together a group of people who are willing to take a stand together. Because Shammah was very powerful here as he stood alone. And we can see that in our history when people stood alone. Let me think of her name. I can see her face. Silkwood. Karen Silkwood. I think it's Karen Silkwood. Took a stand on what was happening in her community that was poisoning the water table and poisoning the people. Yes, we are better together. An image that often comes to me with this is the Wizard of Oz when they lock arms and they skip down the yellow brick road. With their arms locked together, they're stronger, right? And it can be, some of this can be a passive resistance. I remember the moms out in Oregon who took a stand, and they're standing there with strollers and they're standing there as moms. When you band together, when we band together, we are stronger. So what matters enough to you that you're willing to take a stand? Perhaps it's racial issues. Perhaps it's reproductive issues. Perhaps it's gun control. Whatever it is that you're willing to take a stand on, take that stand. Do something. And you might start slowly. You might feel like, oh my God, this is so uncomfortable for me. So do something little. Sign a petition you're asked to sign. Send a letter to someone who has some power and authority to make decisions. Maybe then it's talking to someone that you know will be favorable to hear from you. Build some support. Go from there. Do something. Do something. So that is your homework for today. I want you to decide. Maybe you make a list of all the things that are important to you, all the things that are going on in the world that are important to you. And maybe then you start ranking them. What's most important? Well, they're all important. Yes, I understand they're all important. But there are a whole lot of people in this world. And if we all took a stand on something, pretty much everything would get covered, wouldn't it? So don't feel bad if you don't give to everything. but you pick one or two that are most near and dear to your heart, and you do those, okay? Find your tribe. Find your people who will support you. If you know what it is that you're already focused on, put it in here. Okay, there we go. Lucy's got animal justice. Fabulous, fabulous, fabulous. Pick something. Pick something. My sister said to me at one point, I feel kind of bad that I focus so much on dogs, you know, dog rescue, blah, 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 and there's a lot of human suffering. I said, yes, but you're doing something. You're doing something. She also supports, like, I don't know how many people in foreign countries, but dogs are near and dear to her heart. So that's one she picked. Again, for me, water is near and dear to my heart. I'm going to make a big hairy deal out of that one. Obviously, building the intentional community and affordable housing is important. If people don't have a place to live, it's really hard to get your feet back under you and begin to build a life. So that's another one of mine. Pick something. Good morning, Donine. Glad you're here. Pick something. Take a step forward with it today. Human trafficking, yes, yes, yes. Absolutely. That is a huge one. And that is present in all of our communities. Don't you believe for a minute that it's not, okay? Anytime you have a major sporting event, there's human trafficking happening. The Packer Stadium, there's human trafficking happening. You might want to do la 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 la, but it doesn't work, okay? It doesn't work, all right? Open your eyes, make a choice. Is some of this going to hurt your heart? Probably. But we are strong in the broken places. And when our heart cracks, that's how the light gets in and the light gets out. Be willing to feel something, all right? So, there. That was pretty strident for me. Have an awesome day. When you need support, holler. We can lock arms, we can walk together, we can support each other's causes and make this world a better place. All right? Have an awesome Wednesday. We'll see you again tomorrow. Remember, you're capable of far more than you think you are. Bye-bye.